I thought the hardest part of living on Proxima B would be the food. Turns out, it was the bureaucracy. I stood in the middle of what the Kerev called their orientation hub, but it felt more like the waiting room of the universe's most dystopian DMV. Towering walls of smooth, pulsating crystal hummed faintly, a noise so low it felt like it was rattling around inside my skull. In the center of the room, a massive glowing obelisk flickered occasionally, displaying what I assumed were important instructions in the Kerev's energy-weaving language. Not that I could read it. The Kerev themselves floated, not walked floated into the room, their bioluminescent bodies casting a faint, bluish light. They looked like if someone had taken a jellyfish and decided, let's make it an arrogant prick. One of them, brighter and taller than the others, approached me. I'd learned by now that brightness was their version of being a big deal. This one practically glowed like a nightclub sign, which probably meant I was about to get scolded. Human delegate, it said, its voice vibrating directly in my head like a Bluetooth speaker with bad bass. You are out of alignment. I frowned. Out of alignment with what? Our protocol, it replied, as though that was a self-evident fact. You have deviated from the established acclimation schedule by 2.6 minutes. I blinked. You're mad because I was 2 minutes late? The Kerev didn't blink. They didn't even have eyes, but I could feel its disapproval radiating like a parent who just found out their kid got detention. Deviation introduces inefficiency, it said. Well, I said, shrugging. I guess we're starting off strong. Hi, I'm the walking embodiment of inefficiency. Nice to meet you. The Kerev didn't respond, though I swore its glow dimmed a little. After what felt like an eternity of bureaucratic nonsense, I was finally escorted to my living quarters. The Kerev called it an adaptive residential node, which was a fancy way of saying a glass box in the middle of nowhere. It was sleek, minimalist, and utterly devoid of anything resembling personality. The walls could shift colors based on optimal relaxation frequencies. I set it to bright pink just to piss them off. This environment is calibrated for maximum efficiency, the attendant Kerev said, its glow noticeably flickering. Uh-huh, I replied, tossing my bag onto the featureless bed. Question, where's the coffee machine? The what? You know, coffee. Black gold. Liquid productivity. The thing that makes mornings tolerable. The Kerev paused, its glow intensifying slightly. Your physiology requires stimulants to achieve optimal function. Yup, welcome to humanity, I said, smirking. We're basically 60% caffeine and bad decisions. It didn't respond, which I took as a victory. The next morning, I was summoned to a cultural calibration session, which turned out to be a glorified lecture on why the Kerev were better than everyone else. Our civilization has persisted for 12 millennia without significant deviation, the instructor droned, its glow pulsing rhythmically. Our adherence to protocol has ensured stability and prosperity beyond measure. Cool, I said, raising a hand. But, what happens if someone wants to? I don't know, do something different. The instructor stopped, glowing entirely for a moment. If the Kerev could experience a stroke, I'm pretty sure this one just did. Deviation, it said finally, is not logical. Yeah, but it's fun. I shot back. Ever tried winging it? Rolling the dice? Seeing what happens when you don't follow the rules. The room went silent. The other Kerev stared at me like I'd just suggested setting fire to their precious obelisk. That is unthinkable, the instructor said, its glow dimming. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. Well, buckle up, buddy. You're about to spend a whole year with humanity's finest disaster artist. If there's one thing I learned quickly about the Kerev, it's that they don't do sarcasm, or jokes, or fun, which, let's be honest, made me an absolute nightmare for them. Take breakfast, for example. My first morning on Proxima B, I was served a shimmering, gelatinous cube that pulsed faintly every few seconds. "What is this?" I asked, poking it with my fork. "Optimal nutrient delivery system," the attendant Kerev replied. "Right," I said, inspecting the thing like it was going to explode. "And what happens if I eat it?" "It delivers optimal nutrients." "Uh-huh. And what happens if I don't eat it?" The Kerev paused, its glow dimming slightly. "That would be inefficient." I sighed. "Okay, let's play ball." I took a bite and immediately regretted it. The texture was somewhere between Jell-O and wet rubber, and the taste, well, let's just say it was like licking a battery. I forced it down, grimacing. "Delicious." I lied. "Really hits the spot. Tastes like despair and poor life choices." The Kerev tilted its glowing head. "We do not understand the relevance of despair to optimal nutrition." "It's a joke," I said, rolling my eyes. "Ever heard of one?" "No," it replied flatly. "Well, buckle up, E.T. You've got a lot to learn." Later that day, I was invited, dragged, to something the Kerev called a resonance alignment ceremony. Picture a bunch of glowing jellyfish floating in a circle, pulsing in synchronized patterns, while a weird hum vibrated through the air. It was like Burning Man, but with zero drugs and way more judgment. I stood awkwardly in the center, trying not to ruin their big moment. Eventually, one of the Kerev floated over to me. "You must contribute your resonance," it said. "My what now?" "Your resonance," it repeated. "Emit energy that aligns with the collective pattern." I blinked. Okay." I clapped my hands twice. "That do it for you?" The Kerev froze, its glow flickering. "What was that?" "That," I said, pointing at my clapping hands, "was humanity's contribution. You're welcome." The other Kerev immediately broke formation, their pulsing patterns dissolving into chaos. One of them glowed a particularly angry shade of blue. "You have disrupted the alignment." I shrugged. "Alignment's overrated. Ever heard of jazz? It's all about the chaos, baby." Needless to say, they didn't invite me back. Adapting to Proxima B over the next few weeks, I settled into a rhythm. If you could call antagonizing your host and dodging death traps a rhythm. The planet itself was breathtaking. Endless fields of bioluminescent plants that glowed under a sky filled with 3 suns. But everything on Proxima B wanted to kill you. There were predators with too many legs, plants that oozed acid, and weather systems that could flip from serene to apocalyptic in seconds. Take the rain, for example. One day, I was enjoying a peaceful stroll when a Kerev stopped me. "You must find shelter," it said urgently. "Why?" I asked. "Looks like a nice day." The Kerev pointed at the sky, where tiny, shimmering droplets were starting to fall. "Rain here is not." "Benign," it said. I held out a hand, letting one of the droplets land on my skin. Within seconds, my palm started to itch. Then it burned. "Oh, come on," I shouted, shaking my hand. "Acid rain? Really? Who designed this place?" "Satan." The Kerev didn't reply. It just stared at me, its glow faintly smug. Despite my constant shenanigans, I started earning the Kerev's respect in the weirdest ways. One day, I found myself face to face with a Proxima predator, a massive, 6-legged creature with glowing fangs and an attitude problem. The Kerev watched from a safe distance, their energy patterns clearly broadcasting, "This idiot's about to die." The beast lunged, and I reacted the only way a human would. I grabbed the closest thing I could find, a rock, and chucked it as hard as I could. It hit the creature square between the eyes, and it collapsed in a heap. The Kerev floated over, their glows flickering in what I swear was shock. "You neutralized it," one of them said. "Yeah," I replied, panting. "It's called improvisation. You're welcome. They didn't say it outright, but I could tell they were impressed. Eventually, I decided the Kerev needed a crash course in humanity's greatest cultural achievements. I uploaded my favorite Earth media into their central data hub, starting with Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Watching their reactions was worth every second. Watching the Kerev process Monty Python and the Holy Grail was the highlight of my time on Proxima B. The first 5 minutes of the film had them thoroughly confused. As King Arthur clopped through the woods with his coconuts, the Kerev's glowing patterns fluctuated wildly, trying to make sense of the absurdity. Why does the individual simulate the sound of hooves? One of them asked, their glow oscillating in frantic bursts. It's a joke, I replied, grinning. You're supposed to laugh. The Kerev tilted its body, emitting a confused pulse. We detect no logical purpose for this action. That's the point, I said, throwing up my hands. It's funny because it's unnecessary. After the third viewing of the Bring Out Your Dead scene, I swore one of them flickered faintly in what could have been amusement. By the time we reached the "it's just a flesh wound" scene, I knew I had them. One of the Kerev actually stopped mid-sentence during a protocol meeting to ask, "What is the purpose of 'tis but a scratch?" I leaned back in my chair, smirking. It's called resilience. You know, refusing to quit even when you're missing a few limbs. Humanity specializes in that. The Kerev tried adapting to human humor in their own way, which went about as well as you'd expect. One evening, I found them attempting their version of a comedy routine. A group of Kerev floated in a circle, emitting perfectly synchronized light pulses. It looked impressive, but it was about as funny as a tax audit. Is this entertaining? One of them asked, their glow flickering nervously. I tried to find the politest way to answer, which for me meant, nope, this sucks. The Kerev dimmed in unison, which I took as their version of pouting. Listen, I said, clapping a hand on what I assumed was a shoulder equivalent. You're overthinking it. Comedy isn't about precision. It's about chaos. It's when something completely unexpected happens, and you can't help but laugh. They stared at me, their glows dim. Chaos. As entertainment. Yes, I said, pulling up another classic. This time, it was Airplane. Watching their light patterns implode during the surely you can't be serious scene was a personal victory. A month into my stay, the Kerev had a full-blown crisis. One of their predator containment zones had failed, and a massive creature, something that looked like a cross between a bear and a scorpion on steroids, was rampaging through their city. While the Kerev scrambled to follow their precious protocols, I grabbed a flare gun, duct tape, and a pack of crackers. You are not authorized to engage. One of them protested as I headed toward the chaos. Yeah, well, you're not authorized to let it eat everyone. I shot back. The predator cornered me in one of their glowing corridors, its fangs dripping with something that looked like pure hatred. I didn't have a gun, but I had the human instinct to improvise. I lit the flare and chucked the crackers into the air. The beast, apparently intrigued by shiny objects, lunged at the distraction. I used the opportunity to duct tape the flare to its tail and dive out of the way. The flare's heat spooked the thing so badly it smashed through a wall and bolted back into the wilderness. The Kerev found me sitting in the wreckage, eating the last of my crackers. You neutralized the predator, one of them said, its glow pulsing in what I swear was awe. Yeah, I replied, shrugging. That's called problem-solving. You should try it sometime. After that, the Kerev started treating me differently. They still didn't understand me, but they began to respect what they called my chaotic methodology. Their leader, a particularly bright and stern individual named Zyrian, even invited me to a high-level strategy meeting. We have analyzed your improvisational tactics, Zyrian said, its glow steady. While unorthodox, they appear to yield results. I leaned back in my chair, smirking. That's humanity for you. We don't just think outside the box. We set the box on fire and make a new one. Zyrian didn't laugh, but its glow flickered faintly. Progress. Everything changed 6 months in. A massive, unknown ship appeared in Proxima B's orbit, broadcasting nothing but a low-frequency hum that made the Kerev panic. This is a Class Omega threat, Zyrian said, its glow flashing wildly. We must adhere to emergency protocols. Or, I said, leaning forward, we wing it. The Kerev stared at me. You cannot. Wing a Class Omega threat. Watch me, I replied, cracking my knuckles. The massive alien ship loomed in the Proxima B sky, casting a shadow over the glowing city below. It was like nothing I'd ever seen, monolithic, covered in pulsating organic armor that rippled like it was alive. The hum emanating from it wasn't just loud. It was oppressive, vibrating through the very bones of the planet. The Kerev were in full panic mode. Their glows were erratic, their movements scattered as they attempted to follow their emergency protocols. This ship is unlike anything in our database, Zyrian said, its glow dim and trembling. We are unable to establish communication. It does not respond to logic or resonance patterns. Shocking, I said, strapping on the Kerev equivalent of body armor, which felt more like wearing an electrified poncho. Maybe that's because logic doesn't scare people. Chaos does. What is your plan, human? Zyrian asked, its glow faintly tinged with desperation. I smirked. Wing it. The Kerev's planetary defenses had already been disabled by the ship's first pulse, a technology that wiped out anything running on predictable systems. That meant I had an advantage, because if there's one thing humanity excels at, it's being wildly unpredictable. I commandeered a Kerev reconnaissance craft, which looked more like a glowing marble than a ship, and set course for the alien vessel. You are unqualified to operate this craft, one of the Kerevs shouted as I climbed aboard. Don't worry, I said, hitting a bunch of buttons at random. I've played Star Fox. The craft jolted violently, nearly spinning out of control before I figured out how to stabilize it. I glanced at the controls. None of them made sense, but that was fine. Improvisation was my specialty. The Kerev's voices buzzed in my earpiece. You are deviating from all established flight paths. Yeah, that's the point, I replied. They can't predict what I'm doing if I don't know what I'm doing. The alien ship started firing at me, its weapons glowing with a sickly green energy that crackled through the void. I zigzagged, looped, and spun, moving in ways no AI would ever think to replicate. They're missing, Zyrian said, its voice tinged with disbelief. They're confused, I corrected. Turns out flying like a drunk pigeon has its perks. I maneuvered the craft close to the alien ship, ejecting at the last second before my ride collided with its hull in a fiery explosion. The Kerev were screaming in my earpiece about how reckless I was, but I ignored them. My magnetic boots latched onto the hull, and I began making my way toward what looked like an entrance, a pulsating organic hatch that was opening and closing like a mouth. This is a terrible idea, I muttered to myself, which means it's probably going to work. I entered the ship, immediately greeted by a dark, pulsating corridor that felt alive. The walls seemed to breathe, and a low, guttural sound echoed through the space. Good news, I said into my comms. I'm inside. Bad news. This place looks like the set of Alien. If I see a facehugger, I'm out. After navigating a labyrinth of pulsating corridors, I found myself in what I assumed was the ship's control center. It was a massive, glowing chamber filled with writhing tendrils and a central core that pulsed with green light. This has to be the brain, I said, or the heart, or the spleen. I don't know, but I'm blowing it up. The Kerev's voice crackled in my ear. You must analyze it first. We require data, No time? I interrupted, pulling out the homemade EMP device I'd cobbled together from spare parts. It wasn't pretty, but it would do the job. I placed the device on the core, setting the timer for 10 seconds. "Goodbye, creepy murder ship," I said, stepping back as the countdown began. The ship began to shake violently as the EMP detonated, sending a surge of energy through its systems. Lights flickered, tendrils flailed, and the low hum turned into a deafening roar. I sprinted back toward the hatch, dodging collapsing walls and bursts of green energy. "Your trajectory is chaotic," Zyrian shouted. "Welcome to my life." I replied, leaping out of the hatch just as the ship began to implode. The explosion lit up the sky, a cascade of green and white energy that sent shockwaves rippling through the atmosphere. I activated my emergency beacon, and within seconds, a Kerev retrieval craft swooped in to catch me. Back on Proxima B, the Kerev were silent as I stepped off the retrieval craft, bruised, battered, and grinning like an idiot. Zyrian approached, its glow steady but faint. "You have neutralized the threat through methods we cannot comprehend." "That's called being human," I said, smirking. "We don't play by the rules. We make them up as we go." Zyrian paused, its glow flickering faintly. "Your chaos is effective. Terrifying but effective." "You're welcome," I replied, clapping it on what I assumed was its shoulder. As I sat in my quarters that night, staring at the glowing sky of Proxima B, I couldn't help but laugh. Humanity wasn't the smartest, the fastest, or the strongest species in the galaxy. But we had one thing no one else did: the ability to adapt, to improvise, and to thrive in the chaos. And if the galaxy couldn't handle that, well, that was their problem.